Hello everyone. In today's video we will be working on week 5 of our National Quilter Circle free quilt along. Now this is a mystery quilt along, but I kind of think after this week we have a little bit better idea of what block we are focusing our quilt on. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'll show you at the very end what I think it is. But okay, so the instructions, you can get them from the National Quilter Circle Facebook page group and download them and follow them step by step. Now, I do have to say they are a bit confusing, but don't worry. Just follow my video. I have it all broke out step by step and I make it really easy to understand, okay? So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our fabric to make more half square triangles. Okay, so we're going to make them 8 at a time. So we're going to cut 5 10.5-inch squares of our background fabric and 5 10.5-inch squares of our colored fabric. Now I'm just using scrap, so all of mine are going to be different, okay? You use whatever your theme for your quilt is. Let's just get started with making our half square triangles first. Let's go over some of the things we're going to use this week. We're going to need a ruler to trim our half square triangles to 4.5 inches. We're going to need our rotary cutter. We're going to need a pencil to draw a line on the back of our background fabric to make our 8 at a time half square triangles. We're also going to need our instructions or just follow this video. Okay, so let's go over our next step. We're going to make our half square triangles. We need 36 of them. We're going to make 8 at a time. This is super easy, super fast, okay? Now, I trim them up using this ruler right here. I get perfect half square triangles every time. And I'll show you how to use this once I stitch all of these squares. Okay. So what I did is on the back of my lightest fabric, which is my background, I drew a line with a pencil from corner to corner, okay? Then we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch 1/4 inch on both sides of our line on this direction and both sides on this direction. Once we stitch all 5 of our sets of squares, we'll come back here and I'll show you how to cut them apart and trim them, okay? So let's go to the sewing machine and stitch all of these. Okay, so now that we have our squares sewn on both sides of our lines, as you can see, sewn together. Now what we're going to do is we are going to cut our squares in half, going across and up and down, okay? So here's our diagonal sewing, but we're going to cut it here and here and make 4 blocks. Okay, we're going to cut it like that. We're going to cut it this way. Okay. Now we should have 4 squares, right? Okay. And then if you look, there's a half square triangle on that side and a half square triangle on that side. So now what we're going to do is we are going to cut them apart right on that line that we drew with our pencil. We'll separate our half square triangles and that will give us 8 altogether. All right, so let me get my scissors. You can either cut them apart with scissors, cutting right on that line. Any way you want, you can do it like that. You can use your ruler and your rotary cutter. We just need to separate them. We're going to cut right on that line. Okay. There we go. All right, so we need to trim these half square triangles to 4.5 inches. And that is where this ruler comes in. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for our 4.5 inch here. Do you see that dotted line? We're going to put that on the stitching. So we're going to look at our half square triangle and see where the stitching is right there. And we're going to put that 4.5 inch dotted line right on that stitching and trim our block. Okay? So let me do that so I can show you how. So I'm going to put that 4.5 inch dotted line right on top of the stitching. I'm going to trim away whatever's excess. Okay. And there we go. Now I have a perfect 4.5 inch square. All right. I'm going to trim off these dog ears. These are annoying. Okay. So there you go. We need to make 36 of these half square triangles. Now doing it by 8, we're going to make actually 40. Okay. So you'll have 4 extra. But there you go. So let me finish cutting them all apart and then trimming them all up to get our 4.5 inch squares. And once I do that, I'll meet you back here. All right, so now that we have our half square triangles made for this week, for week 5, what we're going to do now is go back and collect some of the items that we've already cut or made in previous weeks, and then we sat them aside. So we need our background fabric squares, which are 4.5 inch squares that we cut in week 1 and week 4. So you should have 36 of those background squares total. Okay, then we need to collect our half square triangles that we made in week 2 and then week 5, which is this week. So we should have 36 from week 2 and 36 from today. All right, so collect those. Let's lay out our next unit. Okay, so let's start sewing our next unit together. So we're going to take a half square triangle, a background square, and a half square triangle. Make sure you pay attention. Look at the diagram. Which direction the half square triangles are facing, okay? So go ahead and make 36 of these units now. All right, guys. So as you can see, week 5 is very easy. We just had to slow down a little bit and think about what we've already made in our previous weeks and bring it all together. It's kind of like a gathering week. We'll make some half square triangles this week, and then we'll gather some things that we've already made and put it all together and make this unit. Okay, guys, so like I said, I kind of have a hint of what this quilt's going to look like. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek at my guess. I could be wrong. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Like and subscribe to Grandma's channel. Like and subscribe to Grandma's channel.